Okay, so we hear constantly about the big tech names, right?
Yeah.
The ones all over our phones, our feeds.
Mm-hmm. Unusual suspect.
Exactly. But, there are these other companies working way behind the curtain, building the actual infrastructure for modern surveillance. And most people have probably never even heard their names.
Yeah, operating in the shadows almost.
That's what we're digging into today, Palantir Technologies. There was this piece in the Daily Beast called "The Most Terrifying Company in America" is probably one you've never heard of.
Quite a title.
It really is. And it kind of sums up what we want to explore Palantir as this hidden but hugely important part of today's surveillance world.
Right.
So our mission here is to try and get a handle on what Palantir actually does, why it matters, and, what this article suggests about its impact on all of us.
And the core idea from the source really is that Palantir's rise points to something bigger, like a shift in how our societies, even liberal democracies, are starting to operate. More automated decisions, more algorithmic guesswork, and maybe more control.
Interesting. So let's start with the basics. What is Palantir? The article calls it a back-end beast.
Yeah, that's a good description. They deliberately keep a low profile, unlike, Meta or Google. They're not consumer-facing at all.
No flashy apps or anything.
Nope. Their whole business is quietly, systematically collecting and, crucially, connecting data. Think of it like the unseen wiring in a building. It's essential, but you don't really see it day to day.
Okay.
Their main software tools, you might hear names like Gotham, Foundry, and their new AI platform, AIP. They're designed to just ingest enormous amounts of different kinds of information.
Like what sort of information?
Oh, pretty much everything. Hospital records, welfare files, those automatic license plate scans you see,
Wow.
school attendance lists, immigration logs, even like public social media posts, tweets, things like that.
That's an incredible range of data points on people. So they pull all this together.
Exactly. They stitch it together to create this incredibly detailed picture of individuals or groups.
And the article stresses this isn't just like a theoretical thing they could do. It's operational now.
Absolutely. This has happened. Their software is influencing things like drone strike targeting.
Seriously?
Yeah. And how police departments decide where to patrol based on crime predictions, identifying people who might be, future threats.
That's quite something. Are there concrete examples?
The article lists quite a few. Is being used right now on the battlefield in Ukraine. The Los Angeles Police Department uses it. It's part of the back end for the UK's National Health Service.
The NHS? Really?
And counterterrorism work in Germany and France. Plus, tons of U.S. federal agencies, ICE, the FBI, the Department of Defense.
Okay, the list just keeps going.
And it mentions over 100 city police departments across the U.S. as well. So the reach is just, vast.
This really gets to that core idea you mentioned, the shift from just watching to something else.
Right. That's a really key distinction the article draws out. It's the move from surveillance, just observing, recording, to prediction.
What's the difference in practice?
Well, prediction is about using all that collected data to try and figure out what's going to happen next, and then acting on that prediction.
Okay.
Palantir software basically turns people, places, events into variables, data points.
Like in an equation?
Sort of, yeah. These variables get fed into complex predictive models. The software looks for anomalies, flags things that don't fit the pattern, and essentially people get judged by algorithms.
Judged how?
It assigns probabilities,
Right.
flags potential risks. And this is the crucial part. The article raises these algorithmic suspicion, these flags, can end up being treated almost like proven facts by the authorities using the system.
Right. The article has that really stark line, the software decides and people follow.
Exactly. That phrase really jumps out.
It feels like a massive shift in, power. Who makes the call?
It suggests that, doesn't it? That algorithms are increasingly taking the driver's seat, and human judgment might be becoming, secondary.
Which raises huge questions, right? About accountability if the algorithm gets it wrong. What about bias baked into the data?
All massive concerns.
Yeah.
And that leads us naturally to think about who's behind this company. What's the philosophy driving it?
The article mentions Peter Thiel, though not by name, sort of the Silicon Valley archetype.
The familiar figure?
But then it contrasts him with the CEO, Alex Karp, who sounds like quite a character.
He really does. Very unusual profile for a tech CEO. Wears windbreakers, apparently quotes philosophers like Heidegger in meetings.
Heidegger, wow.
Yeah. Lives pretty unconventionally up in New Hampshire with a ski instructor and, get this, apparently can't drive a car.
That's amazing. A tech CEO who can't drive.
It definitely breaks the stereotype.
And the article points out some, maybe, contradictions. He calls himself a socialist, but defends Western civilization while building tech that some see as undermining privacy.
Right. And he talks about mindful living, but, runs a company built on surveillance tools. It's a bit jarring.
So what's the underlying thread then, according to the article? Is it ideology?
The argument made in the piece is that it's less about left or right and more about a focus on order.
Order.
Yeah. And this links to his book, The Technological Republic. The title alone tells you something, right? Echoes Plato.
Plato's Republic. So rule by the wise.
Kind of.
Hmm.
The article suggests Carp, maybe like Plato, sees democracy as, well, inherently flawed. Buggy is the word used, inefficient.
Okay.
And maybe, just maybe, Palantir's data-driven approach is seen as the fix, the patch for democracy's problems, a more rational, efficient way to govern, perhaps.
That's a big claim. And does that philosophy drive their business?
It seems to. Look who their customers are, not us, not everyday consumers. They sell almost exclusively to governments, military, spy agencies, police forces, organizations focused on control and security. And their growth, the article really stresses this, is tied directly to getting more data access. The more data they have, the better their forecasts, the more valuable they are to these clients. Forecasting risk and opportunity becomes very profitable.
So if we zoom out, look at the context, Palantir is doing well financially.
Extremely well. The article notes its stock price has skyrocketed. And it suggests this reflects Wall Street kind of embracing this idea of the surveillance state as, frankly, a profitable future.
Wow.
And Palantir positions itself cleverly. It thrives on volatility, on uncertainty. It markets itself as the essential tool to manage chaos.
So ironically, the more unstable things feel,
The more indispensable Palantir seems to its clients. Its success is sort of linked to maybe a decline in trust in older institutions, that feeling of uncertainty we all have sometimes.
This is where it gets kind of spooky, though. Unlike Facebook or Twitter, constantly in our faces,
Right.
Palantir cultivates mystery. No public campaigns, no influencers. Their power isn't about visibility.
Exactly. It's in the contracts they sign, the code they write, and crucially, their growing access to how the state actually functions behind closed doors.
And the article argues this is maybe a different, darker kind of capitalism.
Yeah, more opaque. A blurring of lines between public power and private ambition, but without the usual checks and balances or public scrutiny.
That's a key point, the idea that they're not just selling to government, but almost becoming part of it.
That's the suggestion. Stepping in, maybe even replacing certain functions, building this predictive system from the inside.
And the goal isn't necessarily like a utopian society.
Not in the way we might think. It's about building a better model of the world, according to the article. A model where anything different, any deviation, is a potential risk.
Where dissent is just data.
Essentially, yeah. Another data point to be analyzed. And trust isn't something earned through openness, but something managed through surveillance and control systems.
And the effect on people. What's the intended outcome of all this?
The article argues it's about making people feel watched. Uneasy, maybe, because that feeling, that awareness of being potentially monitored, is seen as a sign the system is working. It's a deterrent.
So it's not always about catching someone doing something wrong.
Not necessarily. It's maybe more about reminding everyone that the system could catch them, that it has that capability, that reach. It's about the chilling effect.
Okay, so let's try to pull these threads together. What are the main takeaways from this deep dive based on the Daily Beast article?
Well, first, Palantir is incredibly powerful, deeply embedded, yet largely invisible to the public.
The silent spine.
Right. Second, it represents a major shift from just observing to actively predicting and influencing outcomes, especially in government and security.
And the philosophy behind it seems skeptical of traditional democracy, maybe favoring order through technology.
That's the interpretation offered, yeah. And finally, its business thrives on instability and access to ever more data, raising questions about this fusion of state power and private tech.
Which leaves us, and you listening, with a pretty significant thought to chew on. If Palantir is becoming increasingly woven into the very fabric of how we're governed, often completely out of public view, what does that actually mean for things like personal freedom, for the future of democracy itself, especially when we don't really see it happening?